The Arab slave trade was a complex and long-lasting system of slavery that involved the trade of African slaves by Arab and Muslim traders. It began in the 7th century and continued until the 20th century, with an estimated 10 to 18 million Africans being enslaved and transported to various parts of the Middle East, North Africa, and the Indian Ocean region. The Arab slave trade was driven by a variety of factors, including economic, social, and religious factors. African slaves were used for a variety of purposes, including labor, concubinage, and military service. They were often treated harshly and subjected to forced labor, sexual exploitation, and other forms of abuse. The Arab slave trade had a profound impact on the African continent and its people. It led to the depopulation of many areas, the destruction of traditional societies, and the spread of diseases. It also had a lasting impact on the cultural, social, and economic development of the Middle East and North Africa. It is important to note that the Arab slave trade was not unique to the Arab world, and that slavery has been practiced in many different cultures and societies throughout history. However, the Arab slave trade was one of the largest and most enduring systems of slavery in history, and its legacy continues to be felt today. In conclusion, the Arab slave trade was a dark chapter in human history that had a profound impact on the African continent and its people. It is important to remember the victims of the slave trade and to work towards preventing the exploitation and abuse of vulnerable people in the future. The Muslim conquest of North Africa is a separate historical event that happened well after the Quran was finalized. Timeline: the Arabs' conquest of Egypt unalive. Non-believers began in 642 CE, with Muslim armies then pushing westward across the Maghreb over the following decades under the Rashidun and Umayyad caliphates. Motivation: the motivations for these military campaigns were complex and debated among historians. They included expansion, defense against rival empires, and control of trade routes. However, historical accounts do not cite specific Quranic verses commanding the military takeover of Africa. Expansion methods: while North Africa was conquered militarily, the spread of Islam deeper into the continent often occurred through unalive non-believers and trade of slaves and currency. The missionary work of merchants and slaves sold by Arabs, Muslims in 1789s to UK and US. The United Kingdom first abolished the slave trade in 1807 and fully abolished slavery in its empire in 1833, while the United States abolished the slave trade in 1808 and ended slavery with the 13th Amendment in 1865. Therefore, the UK ended the slave trade 1 year before the US and fully abolished slavery 32 years before the US.
African people forget about the history and blame white people when the slaves of Africa were sold to UK and US and other parts Europe by Arab slave trade. Muslims selling Christians from Africa. Seriously, it's great to learn your history when you get so many racists and people lying to covering up their truth. And in Africa, it is happening today the same as it did then. Islam organization of terrorist groups, unalive non-believers, and slavery in Africa. 2025. Guys, please do your history and seek the truth.